People of the Purple Butterfly here, otherwise known as People of Seven on Blue Sky YouTube, People elsewhere on the internet. My soaps located at Purple Butterfly soaps.myshopify.com. My blog, Purple Butterfly People.blogspot.com. And this is going to be part two. I have reached the 24-inch mark. I did a single row of purl on the wrong side, which would make it knit on this side, and now I'm going to bind off. You always want to end with a row 8 and then purl, which will be basically a foundation row across, and then bind off. And then we're going to sew those ends together, and it'll make the band for the hat. Instead of sewing it, I'm going to crochet that, and then we're going to get a circular needle and put into play. I have a size 10 and I have a size 3.2, which would be a size 3. But I would rather pick up the stitches with a smaller needle as opposed to the larger needle, because otherwise I'll have big gaps in the work. So since this is mainly for picking up, it's like I'll just knit looser. It'll be slightly tight, but it'll be congruent. As for cutting and sewing the ends together, a crochet hook works just fine. I have a size 8 crochet hook, so yeah, it'll work out. And then I'll put this back over with my daughter's knitting, crochet, because she's working on a project. Also, that's when I'm going to take out the size 7s, because it's going to be not enough stitches, well, too many stitches, or not enough double pointeds for the hat when I go to attach the double pointeds. And instead of going larger, we're going smaller. My nail just popped off. Oh, that's funny. Okay, let's pick up the drop double pointed needle and my nail tip. Yeah, I'll glue that back on later. Anyway, let's bind this off. In case you don't know how to bind off knitting, speaking to the beginners now. Oh, well, hold on. Huh. Well, that happens every now and then. There we go. Don't panic when your scan decides it wants to have a party with its other strands. That happens every now and then. Okay. Now, to bind off in the knitting, I always go from the knit side, but you could do it from the purl side. Either way, it's going to look the same on camera. Knit one, knit another. Take the first stitch, pull it over the second stitch, leaving one stitch on the needle. Go to the next stitch, knit it, pull that stitch over, one stitch on the needle. Okay, I'll do this slowly. And now I'll adjust my posture because that's killing me. Okay. See, one stitch on a needle, knitting that stitch, take the stitch that's on the needle, pull it over the other stitch on the needle, one stitch left, and do that all the way across, and that is a bind off. And that gives you a finish like that. Okay. And camera adjust. Yeah, it might be easier if you can see me. Hold on, let me gather this on my lap so that way it won't pull in an uncomfortable manner. That's another thing. When you get a certain amount of length to your work, gather it on your lap while you're working, because otherwise just the sheer tension from it pulling down can distort your work. So gather. I used to put sweaters when I'm making them in like a little bowl on my lap, so that way when I was working I didn't have to worry about it distorting by the time that I got finished with the project. I mean, really doesn't matter when you block it, all those stitches become, you know, back to even and everything anyway, but what happens is it gives you an uncomfortable pull, which makes it harder to work. So when you're working your stitches, do everything for comfort. If it's uncomfortable or becomes annoying, you'll stop doing it, and then that's how you end up with unfinished projects. And ask anybody that knits or crochets, say, hey, let me see your whips, which are works in progress. Most unfinished projects are unfinished for a reason. They became annoying, or they ran out of materials and had to replace, or it was causing undue stress on their hands or their shoulders because of the weight. And with the exception of I need to get more yarn, I need to get more materials, everything else is, well, that was becoming bothersome, so I stopped doing it. I took a break, and then you just kind of never get back to the item you took a break from. Now, when you get to that last two stitches and you bind off the last stitch, you just don't just pull the yarn up. Do a yarn over and pull that last stitch through. Give it a tug. And then get your scissors. Cut somewhere. And then pull that excess string up. Now, that's your finished bind off. Now, if I hadn't put that extra stitch there, then when you pulled it up, you would have had a loop and a almost free edge that will be free to unravel. So the extra loop, it becomes invisible. Hold on. But it's right there. It literally locks that stitch in. So I should have made a longer ending strand so that way I can, you know, sew it up. But that's also why I don't cut off my cast on strand, so that'll probably be enough to work with without having to grab more string. Yeah, you'll see what I mean in a minute. That's longer. Okay, now I'm going to anchor this, line it up with a double pointed needle. Hold on. And match all the stitches, because as you can see it appears to be two different sizes, but they're the exact same size. You just got to line it up. Knitting tends to stretch. Okay. That's also why you do a loose cast on, not tight stitches, so that way when it's time to line stuff up, you can. Now, the side that had 3 stitches, that's going to be the side that you do the pickup stitches for the center. But in the meantime, let me go ahead. I'm going to just tie these together, one end to the other end. Doesn't even have to be tight. It's just, that's an automatic marker for where the start is. Now I'm going to take the longer of the 2 strings. Oh, they're about even. Okay, cool. And the crochet hook, and I'm going to connect one to the other. If it lets me, come on now. Cooperate with me. And that's just basically going to be a single crochet. And I'm going to pull it with a tight tension so that way it lies nice and flat. Because basically this is my method of sewing it together. There are people that would take a tapestry needle. In fact, the instructions tell you to take a tapestry needle and sew it together. Not everybody knows how to do that. And some of us just simply don't have the patience to do that. The gagging is trying to come back. Yeah. When I made the cranberry sauce for my family, I had a lot left over, and then after the meal, they sent the rest home because, you know, we don't throw away leftovers, so it's like, I'm not going to eat all this, so I'm sending it back to you. And I made cranberry rolls. I've been eating cranberry sauce with like every meal. I've made cranberry and peanut butter sandwiches. I love cranberries. Well, what I didn't realize, and I should have, because I mean, I've been coughing and gagging since that hospital trip. Cranberries contain a high amount of salicylic acid, which is aspirin. I'm allergic to aspirin, so even naturally occurring aspirin causes me a problem. And basically, I almost took myself out of here by eating this stuff every single day. And it's like, yeah, my daughter said, well, just make cranberry sauce for everybody else. Don't make cranberry sauce for you anymore. No, I made the video on how to make cranberry sauce, so I'm just going to call it a wrap on cranberry sauce. Because we ain't trying to go to the great beyond early. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to subject myself to what apparently is an allergen. Now, funny thing is, I've drinking cran grape, cran apple, cran, whatever juice with no problem. For years, I mean, your throat gets a little itchy. I used to grab that when I had a UTI or whatever. You still feel sucky, but I didn't make the connection that part of the reason I was feeling sucky wasn't the UTI, it was the cranberries. So, yeah, up until I basically ate concentrated cranberries juice or cranberry sauce, yeah, that caused the issue. Now, see, I got to the end of that lead string. Just pull that up and grab the end of the skin. Bring that into the stitch I just did. Pull it. And I'm going to take the end. Well, first I'm finding the end. And connect the two. It doesn't even have to be tight, just has to be connected. Now I'm going to take the end of the yarn. But first let's get the crochet hook out of the work. And see, that's why when they say weave in yarn ends, people be like, what does that mean? Well, when you have a short strand and a long strand, you can hide it within the work. I can remove this now. Hold on. Seems I looped the end into... okay, I see where I am. And just like I accidentally pulled that, that's why the knot's there. So that way I can get right back to it and continue on as if nothing ever happened. But since I like my stitches to match, even with the work being cast off, I'm going to put my hook in there. Take this hook here, or this strand rather, hook that, and then continue on. So that way the single crochet looks like it was a single crochet all the way across. Not that anybody's going to be looking that closely at my connection, but I'm OCD and I have to have things a certain way. And the other double point just popped out to work, but it's okay because now those stitches are already lined up in the correct location. So yeah, so I just continue on across. By the way, that makes the finished edge look like that. Like a basic knit stitch. On the other side, they're almost connecting in the pattern. And that's fine if it's, a little off for a seam. you know, it's just the back of the work, so it's not really going to matter. I mean, if someone wants to match up every single stitch, that's on them. Hold on. I can't even say sinuses. I know what the problem is, and apparently I caused the problem. Or specifically, I forgot the problem. Because I used to make cranberry sauce as a kid, and after the strokes, I forgot a lot of things, and I should have stopped to think, why did I stop making this? Well, yeah, because I'm allergic to it. But yeah, Mom wasn't here to rescue me on those discoveries, so I had to find it out myself by basically almost having another hospital trip. Yeah, so. And talk to my doctor. It's going to take 10 days to get this out of my system because aspirin stays in the body, in your platelets, for 10 days, which is why they use it first before they try hydroxyurea to control platelet counts and all that. But I can't have aspirin, so of course they put me on hydroxyurea to control my platelets. And yeah. Next time I go over something I used to do in childhood that I don't do anymore, I'm going to go, why don't I do that anymore? Yeah, because there's usually a reason. I mean, when I was little, you know, you go to the church dinner or whatever, and you set yourself a plate, and Mom would come by and go, oh, no, you can't have that, you know, and take the food away. I'd be salty like, oh, man, I was finna eat that. But, yeah, there was a reason. Like, there was this one pound cake that a sister at the church used to make, looked amazing. And I thought it was just pound cake. It was lemon pound cake made with real lemons. So, yeah, she took that away from me because she didn't want me to die. Because she loved me. But, yeah, when you're a kid, all you see is they took my food. You don't think, why did they take my food? You know. Well, now I'm grown, so my job is to go, why don't I eat that anymore? How come Mom used, oh, I can't have that. So, yeah, I gotta be my own police now on what I eat and why I don't eat it and etc., etc., etc. Because I intend to be here for a long time, with quality of life being the most important part of it. Now look at that. See how that lined up edge to edge? Same number of stitches and all that. That's why I put the double pointed there, kind of like a stitch marker. And that's also one of the reasons why I don't use a tapestry needle to sew the edges, because you know, when you're putting two things down and using a needle and thread and all that, basically you throw yourself off on the measurements. It's like, oh, I'm just sewing this edge to this edge, instead of I'm lining up this stitch to this stitch at the edge, so that way everything comes out absolutely positively even. See what I'm saying? Okay, and that's, oops, I meant to do a double crochet. stitch, well, single crochet actually, and then one more stitch. And since that's the edge, I have a choice. I can either do a fancy stitch along the edge or just leave it plain. And since this is for me, I am probably going to leave it plain. But for right now, I'm just going to cut part of that off. And this is the edge that I will be picking up the stitches on. So, yeah. In the meantime, when it comes to weaving in the yarn edge, I do it this way. Just slip in and out of those stitches. Ah, I did that backwards, hold up. I go from this side and slip in and out of the stitches. I mean, not that it matters, you could cut it off wherever you want, but you know, I like my work to be neat. Grab your end with the hook, slide it through, give it a wiggle, make it go through. Sometimes it wants to be stubborn and not cooperate with me. It's like, I just got created. I'm newly formed. I got used to where I am, and then you're trying to make me move. Okay. Slide it through. Try not to get other parts of the yarn in that loop. So otherwise you have to do it over. We hate doing stuff over. And pull it through. So now the end looks like that. And then I could just simply cut that close, like right there. But I'm going to go back through and then come out over here. Now I'll cut it close, because now if it decides to pull or whatever, not only will it disappear, but it won't decide to unravel because I went through a couple of times. It comes in handy when you are working with wool, because wool will automatically felt and disappear into the work. And I'm also going to do that with these edges over here, where that knot was, where I ran out of the yarn. And that loose string there as well. Just going to slide it on through. Well, most of it. Yeah, that yarn was terry from the get-go, and it just did a terry thing. See all those little strands? That's what I mean when I say a yarn is terry. It splits. Which, if you're aware that it's going to do that, is no big deal, but otherwise, that can be really, really annoying. Okay, I could weave those in later, because I like my work to be seamless when I do stuff. So yeah, now I'm going to take and stretch all these stitches, and then we're going to flip it this way. That's the back edge of the work. Okay, next thing I'm going to do because I made this exactly 24 inches. Okay, my head is exactly 24 inches. But I figure knitting stretches. So if I went past the 24 inches, then the hat would be too big. I figure if I made it my exact size and it stretches, it will fit my big old dome of a head. So it fits. Now we're gonna work on the crown, okay? Ooh, that was comfortable, nice and soft. So we're going to take this, pull that down so that way it's hiding in the work. Now we're going to take the the circular needle. Oh, at this point you could take your pattern and put it up, because we're not going to need that now. Well, not that part of the pattern now. Okay. And I did type out everything already, so it's going to be on the bottom of the video, but this is your visual guide. Now for me, it might be a different number for you, but for me, it's 110 stitches when I made it the first time, because we're picking up based on the 24 inches. But for you, it might be a different number. That means since the base is supposed to be 90 stitches, I have to do 20 decreases before I do the rest of the pattern. So let me show you how that looks. In the meantime, we're going to come over here. I'm going to make a loop. Actually, I'm going to make a slip stitch. Yeah. There we go. And I'm going to put the yarn in, hanging down. They could connect later. This is the side that you're... Oh. It would help if you could see what I was doing. Okay. We'll just start over. I made a slip stitch. I got the yarn end for the slip stitch hanging inside the work. The work is on the outside. We're going to be working from the outside now. I came to the edge of the seam where I just sewed. I'm going to put the slip stitch there and literally pick up that same stitch, or I could just pick it up and then do a loop. Hold on. I think I'm just going to go ahead and attach that ending string with the ending string. Yeah, come think of it, that's what I did the first time too. And then I drop it through the center. But in the meantime, I picked up, you can stick your work in there, grab the loop, that's 2 stitches, and then grab a stitch, 3 stitches. I'm going to go all the way around until I connect with the other edge. This is called picking up stitches. And that's also why there was 3 stitches on the edge, because when you do the pickup, you're losing that stitch. So the edge of the pattern has 2 stitches, and now there's 2 stitches, and then the working yarn. So if you look, there's 2 stitches, there's 2 stitches. That's why the edge had 3 stitches, so that way when you pick up the yarn, that stitch goes on the inside. Okay, I need to be doing these looser because this needle size is smaller. Okay, but that's also why I didn't want to use a larger needle, because then there'd be a big old gap in between. I find gaps annoying. Okay, and I'm just literally going in between every stitch. The original pattern says pick up 1 stitch for every 4 stitches. That leaves a real big gap in the work, and my OCD couldn't handle it. Especially when I have more stitches than what's in the original pattern. So then it'll be extreme gaps, because I'm not trying to pick up 90 stitches. I'm trying to pick up however many stitches works with the new size. And for me, that was 110. So trying to pick up just 90 stitches from 24 inches, that would have made a really gappy, did you do that at a craft store type look, you know what I mean? That's why I said after you pick up, you write down how many stitches it made for you, divide that, subtract 90 from it, so that way you know how many decreases that you need to make to get to 90 in the work, so that way you get back to the pattern stitch. Because we're going to do a row of, well, no, an inch of knitting after we do the pickup. So during that inch is when you're going to do all your decreases to get to the main base size, and then go to the pattern stitch, and that will be 16 rows of decreases after you do the decreases for your particular size. Don't know if that made sense, but you'll see after we get done doing it. Okay. So basically, you see all those bumps? I'm picking, let's show you from this side actually. See all the nubbles? I'm picking up in between each of those. So basically it's like every other stitch I'm picking up a stitch. Because it's just easier to do it that way. And it allows me to go faster as well. Now you'll notice all the stitches that came off of the edge of the needle is feeding into the circular needle. So at that point, instead of saying row 1, row 2, blah, blah, we'll say round 1, round 2, round 3, etc. Also, you can get a contrasting bit of string or a stitch marker or whatever. When you get to the edge, you're going to put that there, so that way it marks, you know, the beginning and end of the round. Excuse me. Because it's good to know where to start and stop. Especially since each round will have something different going on. That also helps when it comes time to split it up on the double pointed needles. And just like that, we're halfway there. And it doesn't matter if the stitches are exactly evenly, hold on. It doesn't matter if the stitches are evenly spaced on the edge, as long as they're evenly spaced on the needle itself. In other words, you don't have to do every other stitch. You could do 3 or 4 stitches in between or whatever. As long as they're on the needle evenly, there won't be any big gaps in the work, which is what we're avoiding here, gaps in the work. Because frankly, this edge of the knitting is going to disappear. All you're going to see is the stitches coming out of it. You're not going to necessarily see, oh, there's a 2-stitch gap here and a 1-stitch gap there, and there's 4 stitches over there. You're not going to see that. It's going to make, see, it makes the edge kind of congruent looking because 2 stitches here, 2 stitches here. So, yeah. So just pick up stitches all along the edge. Using that 3rd stitch as the pickup row. Now, it's different for every hat. I mean, like I said, I'm basing this on my head measurement, which is 24 inches. And the last time I made this hat, it was 110 stitches that I picked up that we need to decrease down to the base of 90. Now, say for instance, I ended up picking up 120 stitches, or I only picked up, 80. Then if I had 80, I would have to increase to 90. Whatever number I end up, I have to decrease that down to 90, so that way we can continue the decrease rounds back in pattern. See, that's the fun thing about modification or modifying a stitch. You're the one in charge of how you do the modification. So if you have to make extra stitches or less stitches, you do that. So I'm assuming it's going to be 110, but when I actually finish picking up, then I'll know for sure because I have to count them. That's why I said count it and write that number down, because it's going to be different every time you make the hat, unless you make the exact same stitches, the exact same number, blah, blah, blah. You're a human. You're not a machine. You can't necessarily do that. You know what I mean? Especially when you're dealing with different yarns, different weights of yarns. I mean, even bulky, if you decide to make it in bulky, and worsted weight, which is this is, there's still variations in the yarn. So, even though it says size 7 or 8, you might not get the exact same number of stitches every single time when you're doing a pickup on the stitches. And you just adjust accordingly. Okay. close to the other edge. Yeah, real close to the other edge. I didn't realize I was almost all the way around. Okay. That explains why there was suddenly a little tension. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes when you're close to the edge, it's like, let's just go over one stitch. There we go. Because it does this pulling thing, and then it's like, how come I'm having trouble getting the yarn through? Well, because it's trying to find its place in the world too. And the edge is trying to tighten up instead of slide on into where it's supposed to go. So that's when that issue shows up. But just stretch the yarn over and let it work on through its little issues. And that brings me back to my starting edge. Plus a stitch I'm going to put right in the middle there. So that way it closes up that gap that will be made if I don't put a stitch there. Okay. Now, at this point, I'm going to add a different color string as a marker. Let's slide that right on in there. And then I'm going to, well, basically pause the camera so that way I can count how many of these stitches I have. But before I do that, I'm going to transpose these two stitches. That probably didn't make sense, but I know exactly what I mean. Okay, this stitch that's on, that's the last stitch, that's the first stitch. I am literally going to take one and flip the other one through and leave that on the needle. So that way the first stitch and the last stitch are transposed. The reason I do that is so that way there's no gap, and that becomes the first stitch, that becomes the last stitch. So, and I basically got my marker caught up in there. Hold on. Let me just go back. Take that marker out. Okay, now we'll do it. One goes on one side, the other goes on the other side. And now I'm ready to start round one, stitch one. So, yeah. But in the meantime, have to count the stitches, so I'll be right back. 18, 19, 20. I decided to just go ahead and knit the first stitch around and count as I go. So that way I have it just takes 2 out of the count, and then when I could just count as I go. So I stopped at 20, but in the meantime, that's how that's looking on the edge, and that's how the stitch is looking in the work. Now, when you pick up stitches from the right, especially, when you go to knit the next stitch, it's going to do a slight twist. Now, when you're working in pattern, you want to open that up and then knit, and it gives you a correct next stitch. But when you're working in a round and you're picking up, that's 22, 3, 4, 5. I go ahead and knit it with that twist present. First of all, it gives it texture, and secondly, it closes up that gap that you would get in between the work when you're picking up the stitches and there's a gap where you go to knit it. You know, in other words, we're not knitting in any holes, okay? Which is one of the reasons why we're doing the decrease after we do the pickups, because we have to get to a certain number of stitches to get back to pattern. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. And because this is a much smaller needle, it's trying to close in the gap, and that's causing a couple of issues with the yarn trying to snug up. 31, 32, 33, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 40. Okay, I stopped at 40. In the meantime, that also makes the edge look rather smooth. That's the inside of the work, actually. So on the outside of work, you'll notice there's no gaps, no visible gaps anyway. Give myself a lot of leeway. Yeah. It would help if I didn't fight myself in the process. Okay. 41. 2. Also, if the stitches doesn't want to cooperate with you going this way, bring your needle all the way around and then catch it that way. It'll still make that twisted loop, but it'll be easier for you to control without stabbing the back of the yarn being tight and all that. So that's 44, 45. Okay, that'll be 47. 8, 9, 50, 1, 52, 3, 4, 5, 6, And if you lose count, don't worry. You can always recount. Okay, that's 60. Yeah, there's no way 90 stitches only was going to fit on here to fit the amount of measurements on my big old dome, which is why I do my own counting. 61, 62, 4, 5, 7. Apparently I ran out of memory or something. This phone gives you a certain amount of time before it just cuts you off. So I just hit record again and connect the two. Okay, and that's 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90. Look at that. This is 90 stitches. This is the number of stitches that I have left. So, yeah. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 32, 4, 36. So actually I cast on more stitches than I did in my original, and I'm going to have to decrease 36 stitches at the end of the day. Okay, 92, 3, 4, 100, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Just reached the amount for the original. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 25, 26. So I have 126 stitches. That's the number I will write down. Okie dokie. Now let me write that down, then do a little math to see how many stitches I need to decrease to get to 90 before, and then we could do the decreased rows. 126. Where's my ink pen? Ah. And I just had it because I just used it. So, hold on. There we go. Let's use this as a nice flat surface. 126. And then I erased that part. So on my personal notes, it now says 126, decrease to 90, which is blank number of decreases. I have to do a little math so that way I can figure out exactly how many I need to decrease to get to the base of 90. And I'll be right back. So I did a little math and I also found out, ooh, excuse me, my phone has a default of 1 hour for videos. So when it hit the 1 hour mark, that's when it, chopped me off. So at least I heard the chime and immediately hit the restart. But for 120 stitches to reduce down to 90, that's 36 stitches. And I divided that by 4. If it was a uneven number like 5, 10, or whatever. If it was a base of 5, then I would have divided by 5. But since it was a even number, I divided by 4. So that gives me 9 stitches. And that means in the inch that it takes to, in 4 sections. So basically, dividing the work into 4 quadrants, there'll be 9 decreases within those 4 quadrants, if that makes any sense. But I have an inch to reduce down to 90. So this is literally row 1. By the time we get that inch, I would have reduced 9 stitches within those 4 rows. So that way I have a base of 90 stitches to start to decrease. If I get to the 90 before I have gotten to the inch, then I just continue to work to an inch and then start the decreases there, because we have to work an inch up before we start decreasing for the bottom of the cap, if that makes any sense. Okay. I know what I mean. I just didn't say it properly. Let me scoot all these stitches up. And working rather loosely, we'll be going for an inch. Now, for this part, second row or start of the 1 inch, I'm not going to do the twist stitch. I'm going to go ahead and open and knit, so that way I get a proper knit stitch. So for this first one here, because it's just there. So when I open it and knit, that gives me a proper knit stitch on the needle. No twisted stitch. Like that. Well, hold on. Oh, hold on. Even better. increase the aperture so that way, almost like a flash, to make it bigger or brighter rather. See? This doesn't let me zoom in. Now you can see the first stitches were that twisted row. The new stitches will have the same look as a true knit stitch. So, if that makes any sense. Six, 8, 9. And then well actually no, I'll go ahead and work a row before I start the decreases. That way the yarn can settle into its new format. And now I'm working loosely so that way they all fit, because this is a smaller needle than I was working with. And it would help if you can see what I'm doing. Yeah. Get some more tension. Well, leeway, slack. I know what I mean. But basically I'm guessing that 1 inch will be about 4 rows. So I gotta get all the decreases done within that row. So in the second row, every 9th stitch, I will be knitting 2 together like a decrease 4 times. And if it's slightly off, doesn't matter, it's my head. So I don't care if it's a little puffy, if I go over the 1 inch mark or not, because it already fits my head. All I'm doing now is closing up the crown, making decreases. So, yeah. So, I'm going to go ahead and finish this round and bring you back when it's time to do the decreases. Or not. Okay, decreases coming up. Let me move the marker over. And since this is the back, we'll do the most decreases over on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th stitch. Knit those two together. 1 decrease. That's 2 decreases. Oh, that's nothing. When you're decreasing in the round and all the stitches, because you're going in a round, are slightly tilted this way, a decrease will make a slanted or twisted stitch if you go this way. So come in from the back through both stitches that you're decreasing and pull it through, and now it looks like a regular knit stitch. Technically that would be a knit one, or knit two together rather. When it comes to the slip knit, you're just going to slip 2 stitches in that slanted format directly head on, so you don't even have to actually go slip knit because it's in the round. So just go ahead and slip those 2 stitches. You'll see what I mean when we get there. And let's see, 1, 2, 3 decreases. Let's go ahead and throw a 4th one in there. Another decrease. And I decided to go ahead and continue with this smaller needle instead of go ahead and split for the double pointed, because it's still going to come out as a tight knit anyway, instead of slightly looser like the cable part. But basically it's my head, so I don't care if it's not exactly perfect. The stitches, because of the weight of the yarn, are going to line up the way they're going to line up anyway, so it's not going to be a big huge gap. So the smaller needle size is not really going to hamper the progress, if that makes sense. However, if I was using a larger needle, because like I said, the only other size 20-inch double pointed is a size 10. Look at that. Compared to the stitch size. So that would make a bunch of gaps in my work compared to the smaller. Specifically, let me grab one of these needles. This is the size 8, and that's the size 10. As you could tell, if I could get a good grip on it, one is drastically larger than the other. So that would have made gaps in my work. At least with the smaller needles, it closes in the gap. So basically, optical illusion, people assume that all the stitches are the same size, even though they're technically smaller because of the smaller needle. But I'd rather have smaller as opposed to larger and holes in my work, if that makes sense. Come out of there. I mean, I'm working very loosely with this smaller needle anyway, so the stitches are not all jumbled together. They're, settling into their format and giving me room to work. Now, the location of the decreases technically don't matter. Just get the decreases in there because we're reducing down to 90. Now, when we get to 90, the location of decreases will definitely matter because it's making a star at the top of the head by the time we're done with the 90 end stitch pattern. So, yeah. But for right now, we're just reducing down to get to the correct number. So, yeah. So basically, I'm just trying to keep it evenly spaced around. So it's like every 9 or 10 stitches or so, I throw a decrease in there. But since I didn't actually count it out, then I will have to count to make sure I didn't go past 90. Because then I will have to increase to get back to 90. I've done that before too. People don't notice, they just think, huh, what? You meant to do that. Okay, that was decrease round 1. And we're not at the inch mark yet, so yeah. And if I go over that inch, it doesn't matter because, what's an inch? But let's snug this up and show you the fun thing about making stuff for yourself in the round. I could try on the finished product while I'm working on the finished product. Isn't that gonna be cute? That also confirms in my brain, yes, that will fit. But my hair is saying, fluffy Effie. Okay. Now, just at a glance, let me count how many decreases I did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I've already done 14 decreases. 14. So 36. Have to make 22 more. So between the next row and the row after, I already have my 36 decreases because I just did 14 and I wasn't even going, is this exact number and then decrease? I just decreased where it looked like it needed to be decreased. Basically, I knit about this much and then made a decrease, and then knit this much and made a decrease. That was 14 stitches. From 36, that's 22. So basically, I can, do 10 here and 12 there, and I'll be down to 90 stitches. And then at 90 stitches, and I'll still be within the 1 inch, maybe an inch and a half, because this is already looking like it's 3/4 of an inch. At that point, I'll divide for the double pointed needles, and then we'll get into pattern stitch. So yeah, but because I know now that I'm already over an hour and the camera cuts off default at an hour, I'm going to just go ahead and do those decreases off camera, come back when it's time to split out for the double pointed needles, if that makes sense. So I'll see you soon. I'll put this here where you can see, so that way when I come back, we can go there. And I just went past a decrease, so I'll decrease over here so it's not in one straight line, because we want those evenly spaced out. Yeah. These decreases won't do anything for the shaping of the hat. We're just reducing the number of stitches we have. Now if I put them all next to each other, then yeah, it'll change the shaping. Oh, that coughing is back. Yeah, I have to deal with that for the next few days until the issue is out of my system. Yeah. Okay. Come back soon. Yep. Well, I now have 90 stitches on the needle, and I've hit the 1 inch mark, or at least real close to it. So as you can see, The decreases are a little random. The double pointed needles are escaping, but as long as it fits around the hat, right? And that's the difference between a cap and a hat, is we have more stitches than a cap. But also, the needles are becoming kind of difficult to fit on this circle, the stitches rather, are becoming kind of difficult to fit on the circular needle, because now I only have 90 stitches and they're just not fitting. Well, 90, if you divide by 5, gives you 18. So I'm going to put 18 stitches on each one of these needles to get the star shape at the top. At least that's my plan, Stan. So let me show you how I do that. This will not be counted as row 1 of the decrease. This will be counted as the inch that we're working on. This will also confirm to me that I have 90 stitches, because if I have any left over, that will have to be decreased down to 90, if that makes sense. So literally, I'm going to bring the edge of the double pointed over here, so that way it's not in the way while I'm adding the double pointed needle. And it's going to look a little odd seeing how this is larger than this, but yeah. By the time it's washed a couple of times or blocked, it won't make a difference. It'll all smooth out. 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's 18 on that needle. And try to smooth that to the center. Grab your next double pointed needle and scoot the yarn over as best you can. And add 18 to the next needle. Come on, cooperate with me. Okay. Scoot that to center on the needle. Next needle. And I'm bringing this to the front of the needle, so that way it snugs up to the work, if that makes sense. Plus it also gives me comfortable working room when adding the double pointeds. Four, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Now we're going to move this in front of that. Grab another double pointed needle. And the 8 and the 7s are literally intermingled. It's not going to matter. Okay, now we're going to add 18. Six, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14. Come on, slide off that needle. 15, 16, 17, 18. 1, 2, 3, 4. Going by the number of stitches I have left over, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I might have decreased too much. We'll find out in a minute. In the meantime, we'll just go ahead and add these stitches to the last needle. Because there's a difference of 8 stitches. Hold on. Now the double pointed needles are in play. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. there should be 18 on each, or so I thought, because, the way I count it. So, let's see what I did different. Let's move the yard out the way. Oh. Okay. So this is what I have now. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I think I got the right count, but I got the needles in the wrong position. So let's try that again. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17. So we're going to scoot one over. 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18. Scoot that over to this needle. And then count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17. Scoot one over to that needle. And then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18. Okay. Yeah. Center it on the needle so it don't escape. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So I have 9 stitches left over. Interesting. So that means I'm not done with my decreases. Or, doing a little math, I'm either not done with my decreases or I need to add a couple more stitches to make up for the decreases. I have 9 stitches on this last needle, so I'm either going to have to increase to get 18 on that needle, or I'm going to have to decrease to remove these 9. I'm going to do a little math, take out the calculator, and I'll be right back. So it would seem I got a little decrease happy. Here I have 81 stitches. I need 90. So what I'm going to do is increase 2 stitches on every one of the needles. That will give me 10 stitches, give me a total of 91, and then decrease within the work, so that way I have a total of 90, and then I can start the decrease rows for the ending of the cap. It's 8 in the morning, and I basically woke up at 6 something, and I started thinking with my stomach, so math was not my priority. That's my story and I'm going to stick to it. Right, right, right? So, yeah. So, let me show you how to take this to this. But basically what I'm going to do, oh, and that's another thing. Add another needle to do the work. Wait a minute. Size 8. You're going to have to increase, do it with your larger needle. Because the smaller needles are basically there to place hold. So, bringing this in front of the work so that way it's easier for me. 1, 2, going to come in the middle here, pick up a stitch. If it wants to cooperate with me, that would be good too. 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In the middle, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And you're probably thinking, well, there's a couple of decreases on the needle. Why didn't you just pop the decreases? Well, that will make 2 stitches on the needle that have not been knitted, and that will make an uneven number of rows. So basically, I'm just knitting the increases and then doing the decreases on the next round. That's why I did it within the 10 inches that were going up before we got to the decrease rows. Where's the yarn? Hiding. Ugh. It's the only problem working with double pointed needles. The yarn wants to get ghosts within the work. If that makes sense. Okay. Oh, I need to mark short row. Hold on. What did I do with the yarn marker? Ah. Because when it's all time to, redistribute, I want everything to be in the right location, as it were. It just has to go somewhere within the confines of this particular section. So I'm just going to take it and scoop it within. Or at least that's how I was going to do it. This is when that crochet hook that I just put way back over there would come in handy. But in the meantime, I'm just going to take these tweezers, grab it, and pull that through. And then I'm just going to loop it, because it's not going to necessarily matter. It just needs to be there marking the start, as it were. Okay, so it looks like that now. Now this needs to become 20 stitches as well, and then we could move everything over one. And try to keep the stitches as even as possible on the double pointers, except for the one you're working on, because you know, you have to get it close enough to actually do the work, if that makes sense. Two, three, and by a decrease, so I'll just go ahead and increase right next to that decrease. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Same thing. Decrease by that increase. Increase by that decrease, rather. That way I'll end up with 20 stitches evenly spaced on this needle. Yeah. Get on the needle, you. Okay. There, I'm boss. Sometimes you gotta show the yarn who's boss. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Don't drop a stitch. Got enough issues going on. And slide that out. Okay. And see, now we're at the back of the hat where I can make more mistakes, but you know, no one will see them. Oh, this whole time I thought you were on camera. Okay. Two, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So I already made my decreases there. Now this last needle gets 20, well, 2 increases as well. And then we're going to spread out all the stitches, 18 on each needle. And I'll go ahead and increase there because there's not enough room to do it anywhere else. And I've come to the stitch marker. I'll just go ahead and loop that, slide that part off. So now it's back on the needle as a place marker. Of course, it would help if I didn't intertwine it in the middle of the work there, but yeah. I'll fix that issue when I get back around to it. So now, that should give me my 91 stitches instead of 90, and then we'll reduce 1. So what I'm going to do is simply transfer, let me stick that in my head. Well, actually, I'll do it in the round. So we'll go to 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Center that. And then these 2 stitches left over will be the start of the work I'm working on. So we'll go ahead and grab another needle. This will make sense in a second. So we'll move these to the front. Then we're going to go 1, 2, remove that needle, slide it with the rest of the work, snug it up. Okay. Now I can drop that needle because we're working with this needle. Okay. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 18. Now when all is said and done, this needle will have the correct number, this has the correct number, this has the correct number. Basically I'm just moving everything around while I'm working on it. So this should have 18, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Seven, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And there should leave me 9 stitches on the short needle. 2, 4, 6, 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah. So we're going to end up with 18 stitches per needle. One's going to have 19, and then we decrease 1, and then we'll be back to the amount we need for the pattern. What's going on with the yarn? Yeah, there we go. Eight, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 19 on this needle. This is the original row, so, and it just like slid off. But I'll reduce the stitch in the middle, which will put it right by the center. Well, actually, I'll just go ahead and do that. Since that's the center, I'll just go ahead and reduce it down 1. And then the rest of the pattern will be completely congruent. So we'll just go ahead and, actually, let me subtract those stitches. I was going to do it through the center, but why not? Just go ahead and decrease it right there. So now I have 18 stitches per needle. Two, 4, 5 needles. And my marker went somewhere. Okay. Now, instead of the marker actually being on the needle itself, it's going to be in the round. So actually we're going to start it on the first row, so that way I can come back to it as the last row if I could get the needle in there. Let's just use the tweezer trick again, huh? Because now it's marking the beginning and the end. So I just need to know which row I started with. So that would be this. And then at the end, I just slide it out and it'll be like it never existed. If that makes sense. Now, since the yarn wants to act all skippy-ippy, might reduce that down to a ball. Oh, I see what happened. The ending decided to join the beginning, and the band decided to get ghost. See, this doesn't usually happen when I have it in a bowl, but that's okay. But I do think I'll go get a bowl, so that way everything could be the way my brain needs it to be, so that way I don't have all these little, what happened there type moments. I'll be right back. Hold on. And we'll move this to where you can actually see it. Or maybe I'll have it further over here where I am so you can see, because one is a comfortable position and the other makes my back hurt. But I'll be right back. I think I'll start some coffee while I'm up. So, pausing. Okay, that pause came at a good spot because it is 10 o'clock, which means it's time for church. And I already did everything that I need to do for the decreases to get to 90. So the next thing you will see will be the decreases that are in the pattern stitch to end the cap. That should take about 30 minutes to an hour depending on how diligently I work. So I'm going to go watch church and then come back. My hands are a little sore, so I need the break anyway. This has been People. Be right back.